The most destructive thing you can do to another human being does not require your fists, your words, your money, or your time. It does not require planning. It does not require courage. It does not even require you to be in the same room as them. It requires nothing. And that is exactly what makes it so devastating. Nothing. The complete, total, unhesitating removal of your attention from their existence, as if they were a channel you changed, a page you turned, a notification you swiped away without reading. You have felt this before. You know exactly how it works because you have been on the receiving end. There was a moment, maybe recently, maybe years ago, when someone you cared about simply stopped responding. Not with anger, not with an explanation, not with a dramatic goodbye. They just went quiet. And in that quiet, your mind did something terrible. It filled the silence with every possible explanation, each one worse than the last. They hate me. They found someone better. I did something unforgivable and they will not even tell me what it was. You checked your phone obsessively. You reread old messages looking for clues. You constructed elaborate scenarios in which you accidentally bumped into them and they finally explained. The silence consumed more of your mental bandwidth than any argument ever could. It occupied more psychological real estate than any insult, any betrayal, any screaming match in the history of your relationships. That is because being ignored is not a social inconvenience. It is a neurological emergency. Your brain processes the withdrawal of attention with the same alarm systems it uses to process a physical threat. The same regions that light up when you break a bone, light up when you are excluded from a conversation. The pain is not metaphorical. It is architectural. It is built into the wiring of your species. And the person who understands this, the person who can wield this mechanism deliberately, strategically, without guilt and without hesitation, holds a weapon that makes every other form of social power look like a child throwing rocks. Niccolo Machiavelli never wrote explicitly about the art of ignoring. He did not need to. Everything he wrote about power, about control, about the management of perception and the architecture of authority, points to a single underlying truth. Attention is the primary currency of human interaction. It is more valuable than money because money can be replaced. It is more valuable than love because love without attention is just a word. It is more valuable than respect because respect without attention is invisible. When you give someone your attention, you are giving them the most precious thing you own. And when you withdraw it, you are inflicting the most precise wound available in the human psychological arsenal. Most people do not understand this. They think power comes from what you say, from how loudly you say it, from how cleverly you argue or how aggressively you confront. They think the path to dominance is through engagement, more words, more presence, more energy directed at the problem, the person, the conflict. They are wrong. The path to dominance is through withdrawal. Through the strategic, calculated, emotionally controlled removal of your energy from people and situations that do not deserve it. Machiavelli understood that the prince who responds to every provocation is a prince who has no time left to govern. He is too busy fighting fires to build the kingdom. The prince who selectively ignores, who chooses with surgical precision what deserves his attention and what does not, is the prince who projects the most authority, because selectivity implies value. If you respond to everything, your response means nothing. If you respond to almost nothing, the rare moment when you do respond carries the weight of a verdict. This is what I am going to teach you today. Not the childish, silent treatment. Not the passive-aggressive game of pretending someone does not exist while secretly hoping they notice your absence. That is not ignoring. That is performing. And performing is the opposite of power. Real ignoring, Machiavellian ignoring, is the genuine internal structural decision that a person or a provocation does not warrant the expenditure of your cognitive resources. It is not an act. It is an allocation. You are not pretending they do not matter. You have actually authentically concluded that they do not. And that authenticity is what makes it devastating. Because people can feel the difference between being strategically frozen out and being genuinely irrelevant to someone. The first is a game. The second is a death sentence. By the end of this video, you will understand the neuroscience of why being ignored destroys people from the inside out. You will learn Machiavelli's 5 rules of strategic ignoring, each one designed for a specific situation and a specific type of person. You will learn who you must ignore, who you must never ignore, and how to become so selective with your attention that receiving it feels like being granted an audience with a king. But I need to be honest with you about something. This skill is not for the weak. It requires a level of emotional control that most people have never developed. Because your instinct, your deep, primal, socially conditioned instinct, is to respond, to engage, to defend, to explain, to fix. Every fiber of your being will resist the act of doing nothing because doing nothing feels like losing. It feels like surrender. It feels like the other person is getting away with something. Your ego will scream at you to react. Your anxiety will whisper that if you do not respond, they will think you are weak. Your attachment will plead that if you ignore them, they will leave forever. You must override all of it. You must sit in the fire of your own discomfort and do nothing. And when the fire burns out, when the smoke clears, when the desperate need to respond has exhausted itself and dissolved into ash, you will find something on the other side that changes everything. Silence. Not the silence of defeat, the silence of sovereignty. The silence of a person who has realized that their attention is the most valuable thing they own and who has decided, once and for all, to stop giving it away for free. In 2003, a neuroscientist named Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA conducted an experiment that fundamentally changed how we understand social pain. The experiment was deceptively simple. Participants were placed inside an fMRI scanner and asked to play a virtual ball-tossing game called cyberball. They believed they were playing with 2 other real people. In reality, the other players were controlled by a computer. At first, the computer players included the participant in the game, passing the ball back and forth normally. Then, without warning, the computer players stopped passing to the participant. They continued playing with each other and simply excluded the participant from the game. The participants knew the game was meaningless. They knew the other players were strangers. They knew that being excluded from a virtual ball toss had 0 real-world consequences. And yet the fMRI scans revealed something extraordinary. The experience of being excluded activated the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex and the anterior insula, the exact same brain regions that process physical pain. The brain did not distinguish between being punched in the stomach and being left out of a computer game. At the neurological level, social exclusion and physical injury are processed through identical pathways. This finding has been replicated dozens of times across different labs, different cultures, different demographics. It is one of the most robust findings in social neuroscience. Being ignored hurts, not figuratively, literally. The pain is real. The pain is real. The pain is behavioral. The pain is biological. And unlike physical pain, which the brain eventually dulls through habituation, social pain can be re-experienced at full intensity simply by remembering the event. You can relive the moment of being excluded years later, and your brain will fire the same pain signals as if it were happening again in real time. Now consider why this mechanism exists. For approximately 200,000 years, human beings lived in small tribal groups. In those groups, social inclusion was not a preference. It was a survival requirement. If you were included in the tribe, you had access to food, protection, mating opportunities, and shared resources. If you were excluded, you were alone in a landscape filled with predators, starvation, and hostile neighboring groups. Exclusion was not a social inconvenience. It was a death sentence. And so the brain evolved a mechanism to make exclusion feel like death. The pain of being ignored is the echo of 100,000 years of ancestors for whom being ignored meant being left outside the cave to die. Modern life has changed everything about our environment. It has changed nothing about our wiring. When someone ignores you today, your conscious mind knows you are not going to die. Your unconscious mind does not know that. Your amygdala does not know that. Your nervous system does not know that. The ancient alarm bells ring at full volume regardless of context. You could be a billionaire with 1,000 friends, and if one specific person ignores your text message, your brain will generate a stress response disproportionate to anything the situation rationally warrants. This is the asymmetry that makes ignoring the most efficient weapon in human psychology. The person doing the ignoring expends zero energy. They are literally doing nothing. They are not thinking about the other person. They are not crafting a response. They are not losing sleep. They are living their life as if the other person does not exist. The cost to them is zero. The person being ignored is spending enormous energy. They are replaying interactions. They are constructing narratives. They are monitoring channels of communication for any signal. They are losing sleep, losing focus, losing productivity. Their cortisol is elevated. Their attention is fragmented. Their sense of self is under assault. This is why Machiavelli, had he known the neuroscience, would have classified ignoring as the supreme act of strategic dominance. It is the only weapon in the psychological arsenal that costs the wielder nothing and costs the target everything. Every other power move requires investment. Confrontation requires energy. Manipulation requires planning. Retaliation requires resources. Ignoring requires the absence of all of these. You win by doing less. You dominate by subtracting rather than adding. This is not just efficient, it is elegant. It is the most refined expression of power available because power, at its purest, is the ability to affect the world while remaining unaffected yourself. There is another dimension to this that most people miss entirely. Being ignored does not just cause pain. It causes obsession. When someone attacks you, the event is closed. There is a stimulus and a response. The loop completes. Your brain can process it and move on. When someone ignores you, the event is open. There is a stimulus and no response. The loop does not complete, and the brain cannot tolerate open loops. It will run the loop over and over and over, searching for resolution, searching for closure, searching for any signal that allows it to close the file. This is called the Zeigarnik effect, the psychological principle that incomplete tasks occupy more cognitive space than completed ones. Being ignored is the ultimate incomplete task. There is no resolution. There is no closure. There is only the infinite, maddening silence and the mind's desperate attempt to fill it with meaning. This is why the person who ignores you lives in your head rent-free, while the person who argued with you fades from memory within days. The argument was complete. The ignoring is eternal. Until they respond, until they explain, until they acknowledge your existence, the loop remains open, and you remain their prisoner, not because they locked you in a cell, because they walked away and left the door open and you chose to stay, waiting for them to come back. Rule 1. Ignore the provocation, not the person. This is the most precise and most frequently useful form of ignoring. It is the scalpel, not the sledgehammer. You do not erase the person from your life. You erase your reaction to their specific behavior. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment at dinner. You hear it. Everyone at the table heard it. The normal response is to address it, to fire back, to ask, "What did you mean by that?" To engage with the provocation and thereby validate it. The strategic response is to continue eating as if the comment was a car passing outside the window, present in the environment but utterly unworthy of redirecting your attention. You do not pause. You do not make eye contact with the offender. You do not display any change in your breathing, your expression, or your body language. You continue the conversation you were having with someone else. You take a sip of your drink. You laugh at the next thing someone says. The provocation existed, and you chose to classify it as background noise. Machiavelli understood that provocation is a fishing line. The hook is the insult. The bait is the expectation of your reaction. When you react, you have been caught. You are now being pulled into a confrontation on their terms, in their territory, at their chosen time. When you ignore the provocation, the line goes slack. The fisher is left holding a rod with nothing on the end of it. They feel foolish. They feel impotent. And they learn, subconsciously, that their hooks do not work on you. This must be genuine. If you ignore the comment, but your jaw tightens, or your eyes narrow, or your breathing changes, you have not ignored it. You have suppressed your reaction, and suppressed reactions leak. The body betrays what the mouth conceals. True ignoring requires genuine internal reclassification. You must actually, in real time, decide that this comment does not merit the electrical energy required for a single neuron to fire in response. It is beneath you, not in an arrogant way. In a mathematical way, the return on investment of engaging is negative, so you do not invest. Rule 2. The public ignore. This is the amplified version of Rule 1, deployed specifically in group settings. Its power comes from the presence of witnesses because social dynamics are exponentially more sensitive when observed by others. In a group conversation, someone addresses you with something disrespectful, dismissive, or designed to undermine your status. Instead of responding to them, you turn your attention to another person in the group and initiate a new thread of conversation, not abruptly, not dramatically, smoothly, as if the person who just spoke was a television playing in the background of a restaurant. You registered the noise, but you chose to talk to the person in front of you instead. The effect on the ignored party is devastating. Because it is not just you who noticed the exclusion, everyone in the group noticed. And what they witnessed was not a conflict in which two people fought. They witnessed one person attempt to engage and another person deem them unworthy of engagement. The status implications are catastrophic for the ignored party. They have been publicly classified as irrelevant by someone whose attention apparently has higher priority destinations. Machiavelli observed that public perception is the currency of power. What people see is what they believe. When a group witnesses you ignoring someone, they unconsciously adopt your assessment. If he does not consider that person worth responding to, maybe they are not worth responding to. Your ignore becomes contagious. It reshapes the group hierarchy in real time. The ignored person feels the shift. They feel the room recalibrate, and they cannot fight it because there is nothing to fight. You did not attack them, you simply allocated your attention elsewhere. How do you argue against someone's decision to talk to someone else? You cannot, and that impossibility is the knife. Rule 3. The delayed ignore. This is the most psychologically sophisticated of the 5 rules. It works not through consistent silence, but through inconsistent responsiveness. You respond to some of their messages immediately. You respond to others after 12 hours. And some you never respond to at all. There is no discernible pattern, no logic they can decode, no algorithm they can reverse engineer to predict which messages will receive attention and which will vanish into the void. This creates a state of intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful conditioning mechanism in behavioral psychology. It is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The slot machine does not pay out every time. It pays out randomly, and that randomness is what keeps the player pulling the lever hour after hour, because the next pull might be the one. The next message might be the one that gets a response. When you are intermittently responsive, the other person becomes hyper-attentive to your communication patterns. They analyze your response times. They scrutinize the content of the messages you do respond to, looking for clues about what earns your attention. They become psychologically invested in solving the puzzle of your responsiveness. And while they are investing all of this energy into understanding you, you are investing zero energy into them. You are simply living your life and responding when you feel like it. The asymmetry is absurd. They are obsessing. You are existing. And that gap is the source of your power. Rule 4. The upgrade. Ignore. This is ignoring through replacement. Instead of withdrawing your attention into a vacuum, you redirect it visibly towards someone or something else. The message is not, "I am ignoring you." The message is, "I have found something more interesting than you." Someone in your social circle has been disrespectful. Instead of confronting them or withdrawing entirely, you begin investing visibly in a new connection. You are seen at events with new people. You are engaging enthusiastically with new projects. Your social media reflects a life that has moved on and upgraded. The old person is not blocked, not removed, not mentioned. They are simply no longer relevant to a life that has expanded beyond them. This triggers one of the most painful psychological experiences available: the experience of being replaced. Being ignored is painful because it triggers the fear of irrelevance. being replaced is worse because it confirms the irrelevance. It provides evidence. They can see with their own eyes that the space they used to occupy in your life has been filled by someone else, and the someone else looks like an upgrade. Machiavelli would recognize this as a demonstration of abundance. The prince who has many allies does not need to cling to the one who betrayed him. He simply redirects his resources. The betrayer sees the redistribution and understands viscerally what they have lost, not because you told them, because you showed them. Rule 5. The permanent ignore. This is the nuclear option. Complete, irreversible, absolute erasure. The person ceases to exist in your world, not temporarily, permanently. No blocked accounts, because blocking is an action signal that the person still occupies space in your mind. No dramatic announcement. No final conversation. No closure. Just silence. Expanding, infinite, permanent silence. The permanent ignore is reserved for specific situations, for the person who has betrayed you so fundamentally that rehabilitation is impossible. For the person who has demonstrated through repeated behavior that they are a net negative in your life. For the person whose presence, even in your peripheral awareness, costs you psychological energy that you can no longer afford to spend. This is not punishment. Punishment implies that you still care about their behavior and want to change it. This is triage. You are a surgeon removing necrotic tissue. The tissue is dead. Keeping it attached to your life will only spread the infection. So you cut, cleanly, completely, without sentiment. Machiavelli wrote that injuries should either be so slight that they do not provoke retaliation, or so devastating that retaliation becomes impossible. The permanent ignore is the devastating option. It is so complete, so final, so total in its withdrawal that there is nothing for the other person to push against. They cannot argue with someone who is not there. They cannot negotiate with someone who does not acknowledge their existence. They cannot retaliate against a void. The permanent ignore is the most Machiavellian move available because it requires the most difficult internal achievement. It requires you to genuinely stop caring about a person you once cared about deeply, not to pretend, to actually arrive at a state of authentic indifference. And that indifference, when it is real, is the coldest fire in the psychological universe. It does not burn hot. It does not burn bright. It simply removes all heat from the space where the other person used to matter. And in that absence of heat, they freeze. Category 1. The attention parasite. You know this person. They exist in every social ecosystem. They are the one who turns every conversation into a performance, the one who creates drama not because drama is necessary, but because drama produces attention. They start fights to feel alive. They manufacture crises to pull you into their orbit. They say provocative things not because they believe them, but because provocation guarantees engagement. The attention parasite does not care whether your attention is positive or negative. Love and hatred are equally nutritious to them. What they cannot survive is indifference. Indifference is starvation. When you argue with them, you feed them. When you criticize them, you feed them. When you gossip about them, you feed them. Even when you complain about their behavior to someone else, you are feeding them because you are still dedicating cognitive resources to their existence. The only way to defeat an attention parasite is to cut the supply completely. You do not engage with their provocations. You do not respond to their drama. You do not discuss them with mutual friends. You treat them the way you treat a pop-up ad on a website. You close it without reading the content. You do not even register what it was selling. It was noise. You moved past it. Next. When you do this consistently, the parasite will escalate. They will produce bigger provocations, louder drama, more extreme behavior. This is the extinction burst, a well-documented phenomenon in behavioral psychology. When a reinforced behavior suddenly stops being reinforced, the organism increases the intensity of the behavior before eventually abandoning it. The toddler whose tantrum used to produce candy will throw a bigger tantrum when the candy stops coming. But if the candy stays gone, the tantrum eventually dies. Hold the line. Do not feed the escalation. The extinction burst is the parasite's last gasp. If you survive it without engaging, The parasite will redirect their energy to someone else, someone who still feeds them, and you will be free. Category 2. The chronic disrespector. This is different from the attention parasite. The chronic disrespector is not seeking attention. They are seeking dominance. They disrespect you not because they need your reaction, but because your tolerance of their disrespect confirms their status above yours. Every time they cross your boundary and you continue engaging with them, they receive a status confirmation. I can treat this person however I want, and they will still be here. That makes me powerful and them weak. You have tried other methods with this person. You have set verbal boundaries. You have expressed your feelings. You have asked them to stop. You have argued. You have threatened. None of it worked because all of it was engagement. And engagement, even negative engagement, even confrontational engagement, still communicates the same underlying message. You are significant enough in my life that I am investing energy into trying to change your behavior. The ignore reframes the message entirely. It says you are not significant enough to change. You are not worth the investment. I am not going to modify your behavior because modifying your behavior requires me to acknowledge that your behavior matters. It does not. You do not. This is the reframe that breaks the chronic disrespector, because their entire power structure was built on the assumption that they mattered to you. That assumption was the foundation. When you withdraw it, the foundation disappears, and without a foundation, the structure collapses. They are no longer the powerful person who gets away with disrespect. They are the irrelevant person who speaks to a wall, and speaking to a wall, no matter how confidently you do it, looks absurd. Machiavelli would recognize this as the removal of the stage. The chronic disrespector is an actor who needs an audience. You were the audience. When you leave the theater, the performance becomes a man talking to himself in an empty room. There is nothing sadder. There is nothing more deflating. And there is nothing more effective at ending the behavior permanently. Category 3. The former version of your circle. This is the hardest category because it involves people you once genuinely loved. Friends from your old life. Colleagues from your old career. Family members who represent the version of you that you have outgrown. They are not bad people. They have not betrayed you. They have not disrespected you. They are simply operating at a frequency that no longer matches yours, and their presence in your life, through guilt, through nostalgia, through obligation, is dragging you backward toward a version of yourself that no longer exists. This is where ignoring becomes an act of self-preservation rather than an act of aggression. You're not punishing these people. You're protecting your trajectory. You're acknowledging a painful truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Not every relationship is meant to be permanent. Some people are chapters, not characters. They were essential to a specific period of your growth, and they are not essential to what comes next. The ignore here is gentle. It is the gradually lengthening response time, the declined invitations without alternative offers, the warmth that slowly cools from hot to tepid to room temperature. You do not explain. Explanation opens a negotiation, and negotiation pulls you back in. You simply become less and less available until the relationship fades to a background hum and eventually to silence. This will produce guilt, enormous guilt, because you are a good person, and good people do not abandon their friends, but you are not abandoning them. You are honoring the truth that your paths have diverged. Continuing to pretend otherwise is not loyalty. It is performance. And performance, as Machiavelli knew, is the enemy of authentic power. The one person you must never ignore. Yourself. Everything I have taught you about ignoring others is useless, worse than useless, actively destructive if you are simultaneously ignoring yourself. And most people who become skilled at ignoring others are doing exactly that. You ignore the pain in your body that is telling you something is wrong. You ignore the voice in your gut that says this relationship is toxic. You ignore the restlessness that tells you your career is a cage. You ignore the grief that has been waiting in the corner of your mind for years, asking to be processed. You ignore these things because attending to them is painful, because acknowledging them would require change, because the truth of your own internal landscape is more frightening than any external conflict you have ever faced. Machiavelli wrote for the prince, But the prince's greatest enemy was never the foreign invader. It was the rot within his own court, the internal politics, the unaddressed corruption. The advisors he ignored because their truth was inconvenient. The prince who ignores his internal intelligence is the prince who falls, not to an external army, to his own neglected infrastructure. You must attend to yourself with the same ruthless precision that you apply to ignoring others. Your emotions are intelligence reports. Your body is a diagnostic system. Your intuition is a pattern recognition engine running calculations too complex for your conscious mind to process. When these systems send you signals, you do not have the luxury of ignoring them. They are your early warning system. Ignore them and you will be blindsided by the very crises they were trying to prevent. Be ruthless with your external attention. Be generous with your internal attention. Ignore the noise of the world. Never ignore the signal of your own soul. Everything I have told you today can be distilled into a single principle. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess. More valuable than your money because money can be earned back. More valuable than your time because time without attention is just existence. More valuable than your energy because energy without direction is just heat dissipating into the void. And you have been spending this resource with the recklessness of someone who believes the supply is infinite. It is not. Your attention is finite. It is depletable. It is exhaustible. Every person you attend to, every provocation you engage with, every drama you follow, every notification you check, every gossip thread you participate in, every argument you enter, every ex you stalk, every comment section you scroll through, each one is a withdrawal from an account that does not replenish automatically. At the end of each day, your attention account is empty. Tomorrow it will refill. But the question is, what did you buy with today's supply? Did you invest it in your work, in your body, in your relationships with people who actually matter, in the deep, focused, sustained concentration that produces mastery? Or did you spend it on noise, on drama, on people who are not building anything and who exist solely to consume the resources of those who are? Machiavelli understood the economy of attention at the political level. He observed that the prince who gives audience to every petitioner, who responds to every complaint, who attends to every minor dispute in his kingdom, is a prince who will never accomplish anything of consequence. He will be perpetually busy and perpetually ineffective. His days will be full and his legacy will be empty. The effective prince is the one who delegates, who filters, who creates layers of insulation between himself and the noise of daily governance. He attends to the strategic, he ignores the trivial, and the space between those two categories is where his genius operates. You must become the gatekeeper of your own attention, not metaphorically, operationally. You must treat your attention like a nightclub with a velvet rope and a bouncer at the door. Not everyone gets in. Not every thought gets in. Not every person gets in. Not every emotion gets in. There is a list, and if you are not on the list, you wait outside in the cold. And maybe if the gatekeeper decides you are worth it, you get in later. Or maybe you never get in at all. This sounds arrogant. It is not arrogant. It is necessary. Because the alternative is what you are living right now. A mind with no bouncer. An open-door policy where every notification, every obligation, every needy person, every toxic dynamic walks in and takes a seat and orders a drink and stays until closing time. Your mind is a crowded, noisy, chaotic bar full of people who should not be there, and you, the owner, are too polite to ask anyone to leave. Start asking people to leave. Start closing the door. Start looking at every input that enters your awareness and asking one question. Does this deserve the most valuable resource I possess? If the answer is no, it gets ignored, not with malice, not with drama, with the same neutral efficiency with which you delete a spam email. It was not relevant. It was not valuable. It was noise. Delete. Next, when you begin to practice this, you will discover something that changes your experience of being alive. You will discover depth, because attention that is spread thin produces shallow experience. You know a little about everything and a lot about nothing. You have 1,000 acquaintances and 0 intimate connections. You have seen 1,000,000 videos and retained the content of none. You have been everywhere and experienced nowhere. Your life is wide and it is paper thin. When you concentrate your attention, when you pour it into a narrow channel, the depth becomes extraordinary. Your work reaches a level of quality it has never reached because you are giving it the sustained focus it requires. Your relationships become profound because you are actually present, not half present, while the other half checks notifications. Your experience of a single hour becomes richer than your previous experience of an entire week because you are fully in the hour, not fragmented, not distracted, not divided, fully, completely, totally. This is what the great Machiavellian strategists understood. They did not succeed because they did more. They succeeded because they did less. They chose fewer battles and won them decisively rather than fighting on every front and losing slowly on all of them. They invested their attention the way a general invests troops, concentrated at the point of maximum impact, withdrawn from theaters that do not matter. You have been fighting on every front. You have been responding to every provocation. You have been attending to every person who demands your attention. And you are losing, slowly, quietly, across every domain of your life. Not because you lack ability, because your ability is diluted across too many targets. Concentrate it, focus it, narrow the aperture until the light becomes a laser. Imagine your life 1 year from now if you implemented everything in this video. The attention parasites have starved and moved on. The chronic disrespectors have been met with silence so consistent that they have restructured their behavior or exited your life. The former versions of your circle have faded into fond memories without the guilt of forced maintenance. Your phone is quieter, your mind is clearer, your work is deeper, your presence is heavier. People around you notice the change, but they cannot articulate it. You seem different, more solid, more settled, more selective. They feel that your attention, when you give it to them, is worth something. It is a gift rather than a default. It is a choice rather than a reflex. And because it is rare, because it is selective, because it must be earned, they value it. They handle it carefully. They do not waste the moments they have with you because they know those moments are not guaranteed. This is the ultimate power position, not the person who demands attention. The person whose attention is demanded, not the person who chases engagement. The person whose engagement is chased, not the person who needs to be heard. The person whose silence speaks louder than anyone else's words. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in Silence, in exile, in a farmhouse where no one was listening. And that book, written in the absence of an audience, written without the need for anyone's attention or approval, became the most listened to political text in the history of the Western world. His silence was louder than every speech given by every politician who exiled him. His ignore was louder than every decree issued by every Medici who tried to erase him. He won by doing nothing, by attending only to his own mind, by becoming the gatekeeper of his own attention and refusing to let anyone or anything enter that did not serve his highest purpose. That is your model. Not noise, not volume, not engagement with every person and every provocation and every drama that presents itself at your door. Silence. Selection. The ruthless, precise, unapologetic allocation of the only resource that actually matters. If this resonated with a part of you that is exhausted from attending to things that do not deserve you, if you felt something shift in the way you think about your own attention, then the work has already begun. Subscribe to this channel. Not because I need your attention, because you have decided to become more selective about where you give it. And if this earned it, then what comes next will be worth the investment. The gatekeeper is awake. The velvet rope is up. Let the line form outside.